Here are 8 tips I want to share with you on how to be more productive with your AI agent coding tool. I wish I knew these earlier, and it doesn't really matter which agentic coding tool you're using, whether it's Claude Code, Cursor, Windsurf, because these concepts that I'm about to share with you will work with any of those tools. The first tip is using multiple agents in the background. Let's say you have a project on GitHub and you have a main branch. Think of your agent as literally another you or your coworker. You create another branch, you clone it into a separate folder, and then you run the agent on that branch. Now, let it do its thing. After 10, 20 minutes, all you have to do is review the work, commit the changes, and then merge it into the main branch. Let me show you how I've been able to automate this process. All right, here I'm going to run a command, run agent background test2. And what you're going to notice is it's going to clone the repo, create a new branch, and open up that newly cloned repo in a new instance of Windsurf. Test2 being the branch name that I just specified. This is really cool because let's say I just wanted to change background of the home page to green. Let's say this is 10 minutes after I came back and it's done this huge long work, not just one line of code, but you know what I mean. Now, what do? So I'm going to run agent cleanup. And what this is going to do is commit the changes and then push the whole branch back up to GitHub, and it will also delete this whole folder. All I have to do on my end is just close Windsurf, and if I open GitHub, I can see that it has pushed the test2 branch, and you can see the changes here. Before you go down into the comments and be like, where's the script? Is it on GitHub? Why don't I just give you the prompt that I use to generate these scripts, and you can just copy and paste them into your AI tool of choice. While it's pooping that out, you can finish watching the rest of this video, because you definitely do not want to miss the next point. Let me just show you these prompts. There are 2 scripts, one for the background and one for the cleanup script. The background just clones the repo, creates a new branch, copies any environment files into the clone directory, opens up a new instance of the clone directory with Windsurf. And make sure to add a command to package.json files so that I can easily call it with an alias. As for the cleanup script, it just commits the changes, pushes changes to GitHub, deletes the local directory, and tries to close the Windsurf window instance, which never really works. And also make sure we don't really need to specify a commit message. And lastly, I'm just making sure that this script can never be run on my copy of the project. Now, if we want to extend the capabilities of the coding agents, we can use something called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. You don't really need to understand the technical side of MCP. Just know that it's a protocol that allows the agent to talk with external tools. Let's take a look at how MCP server actually works, at least inside Windsurf, and I'll show you how to set this up in a moment. I have my Supabase MCP server hooked up. I'm just going to chat with Cascade, and I'm going to say in the Supabase devlogger YouTube project, delete the public user table. You can see it's doing some tool calling, and I can show you here that we currently have the users table. And boom, it has succeeded deleting the users table. So if we refresh this, it is gone. To set this up in Windsurf and in any other AI tools you may be using, it's going to be very similar to this. The nice thing with Windsurf is that they actually have a MCP plugin store. So here I just need to search for Supabase, and I click install, and it's going to ask me to input the Supabase access token. All I need to do is go to Supabase, go to my account preferences, go to access token. I'll need to generate a new token, go back to Windsurf, paste the token, and now I have Supabase MCP server enabled inside of Windsurf. Now that we have talked about how we can extend our AI tooling capabilities, let's take a look at how we can expand our AI tooling arsenal. This is my tip for number 3. Using different models for different tasks based on their skill set, just like how you would delegate work to different people based on their specialization. Let me give you an example. I have my project here and I want to implement authentication. How would I go about doing this? I can't just one-shot the whole thing because it clearly will mess up the whole project. And what I've discovered is I like to plan out all the steps I need to do in order to implement a big task. I'm going to have the AI plan the task for me, but which model am I going to use to plan the task? Honestly, I found that 3.7 Sonnet is great at coding, but for task planning and bigger project, I've had a lot better success with Gemini 2.5 Pro. I'm going to have it create a new spec folder under the root directory and add a file called 010 authentication tasks. In this file, I'm going to have it write down all the steps needed to implement super-based authentication in great and verbose detail. Think carefully about every edge case and split up each section so it can be worked in parallel. For example, UI, super-based configuration, things like that. Review the plan and make sure you did not miss anything. It has created the markdown file, and at this stage, I would make sure it's all right before I actually hand it to another AI model, probably Claude Sonnet 4 or 3.7. And because some of these sections can be done in parallel, I would use the background AI agent trick that I previously talked about to implement multiple of these tasks all at the same time. Don't shy away from experimenting and seeing which model is good at which kind of task. This is really a skill set. Just because a benchmark says one model is better than another doesn't mean it's actually better than the other, especially when it comes to coding. At least that's what I found. Speaking of documentation, tip number 4, use AI rules and documentation. These act as a guideline on how the agent processes every single one of your prompts. It will help maintain a certain level of standards. In Windsurf, you can specify this rules file under .windsurf rules and global.md. Every agent has something very similar to this. You just have to look it up. It just outputs better quality code. For example, sometimes they just end up writing a to-do, implement this later. Rather than having it do that, I specifically tell them not to write to-do comments, think about what it's doing, and implement out the whole shebang. I'm pretty sure I got this MD file somewhere on the web. You can probably find it. If you just search on Google, they're all very good, and they all pretty much say very similar things. Tip number 5, clear context when you're switching tasks. If you are one of those people who literally just keeps typing and talking back and forth with the agent forever, and your conversation is basically an infinite scroll, then you're probably wondering, why is the output so bad? The longer the conversation, the bigger the context, the more vague the output becomes. At least that's what I found. What these agents do is it will basically take your whole conversation history, gives it to the model outputs like a summary, and then it continues the conversation with that summary, which is not great because the summary probably misses a lot of important details that you've previously mentioned in the conversation. One of the things that caused me to have long conversation with an agent is when it continuously fails at its task. This leads to tip number 6. How do I deal with retries? If an agent fails, do I just continuously talk to it until it eventually figure out? How do we deal with this? In this case, what I like to do is I would have it output an MD file with a solid task list using a model like Gemini to really be comprehensive. On top of that, if the agent is having issues tackling one of these tasks, I will then ask it to break the task into smaller subtasks and list that out as to do in the actual code file. And then I'll have it complete each of those to-dos that it created for itself. Additionally, I love to just chat with the agent if I'm really stuck, especially when it comes to getting the right prompt, clarifying points that it may be getting stuck on. Chat is great for that because it won't modify the files. Once it understands what I'm looking for, I'll have it output the prompt and I'll copy and paste that prompt right back into a new agent and have it actually edit the files this time. For tip number 7, let me just give you a couple of prompts that I've been having pretty good success with lately. You just add these anywhere in your prompts and it primes the agent to be more thoughtful about its output. The first prompt here is think carefully, step by step, on what the best solutions are for implementing X. List out all the available options and review each option before picking the best one and implementing it. This allows non-reasoning model to become a bit more like a reasoning model. The next one I have here is break down and meticulously analyze X into smaller tasks. List out all the tasks and review each task before implementing it. Again, this is very similar to the first prompt, making the model really think about what it's doing before actually applying the changes. I found the words that I like to use in my prompts, these are think carefully, analyze meticulously. Please do something or do not do something. These are more commanding words. If you can just imagine yourself as a teacher and your student is working on a really hard problem, but you don't want to give them the whole answer. So you just guide them slowly towards the answer. At least that's how I picture it in my head. This leads me to tip number 8, thinking differently about agentic coding tools. I know those on way far end, which is like no coding tools, they make you dumber, you're stupid if you use them, dislike, unsub, all that jazz. And then there's the other side where it's like you are dumb if you're not using these tools. Both opinions are valid. However, I think it's an additional tool in our toolbox as a developer. I definitely went through the whole phase where I first used the tool. I was like, this sucks. Obviously, I didn't try at all. I didn't try to understand how to prompt it. Like, there's actually an art to this. So I just like, oh, build me an app. Of course, it's not going to build me an app. And it output gibberish. Then I stopped using it. And then I went back into it. And I was like, there's got to be something here. Because it seems like some people are getting really good results. Then I was like, okay, let me give this a chance. I started to think of it as a tool that I actually need to learn how to use, rather than a tool that just does things for me without actually putting in the work. You know, like if you were trying to play an instrument on day one, you don't expect to play freaking Beethoven piano concerto. That's just not how it works. While there's not really a clear learning path or guidelines that's set for how you actually use these tools, because it's so new and it's so subjective, empirical, depends on what you are working on. It's very specific and personal to you. All I'm saying is that it takes skills to know how to prompt, to know the limitations of each model, to know what each model is good at, and how to combine them all together to get what you want faster than you can do it yourself. Does that make sense? Of course, you're not going to be like at 10x speed. There's also some people that say like, oh, AI works for you because you don't have the skills. While only a tiny portion of that is true. Could you, for example, if you're a master of JavaScript, TypeScript, front end, what happened if you had to do something like audio processing in C++? Can you do that as good as what you do in the front end? And that's what I feel like AI is filling the gap. It's leveling out the playing field. Sure, you might not beat the best at this topic, but time is limited. We can't know everything that exists out there. We can't know every programming language, can't know every framework, every library, and be the best and most amazing at them. This is why agentic coding tools is so powerful. It just gives the baseline that we can work off of, rather than, oh, I need to implement backend, some low-level processing, and it's in a completely new language that I have never touched before. I have no clue what library framework to work with. That's hard. You would take a lot of time to learn that. Or if you're using AI agentic tool, you just be like, hey, think long and hard about this problem. Give me the solution of how I can implement this, and then go ahead and attempt to implement it for me.